Well, I'm a man on fire.
Yeah, all right. We are here on the Slack line with Jay Wow.
Wow.
And the boss.
The boss is coming.
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you.
And we are here with Alexis Makepeace.
Hello.
Film director, writer. Is that where it stops? Or do you do other things on film? No?
Really.
Are there other things in life?
No.
Okay, cool. That's all right. Yeah, film director and writer. And we are actually without JWoww today. It's a little bit weird, actually, Alexis. A couple weeks ago, we had an episode where JWoww, he didn't show up. Like, he just didn't show up.
Oh.
We were with Morgan Haley Smith, who I think you know.
I am. I'm familiar.
And then he called halfway through the cast, and he was at the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas.
Oh, shit.
And they had mistaken him for a Mexican person, and they were trying to deport him, and a whole bunch of shit happened.
Fuck.
He lost his phone. We talked to a Trump supporter for a little while who recovered it, and then JWoww ended up with his phone back. But then that episode like disappeared into the ether. Like I can't edit it anymore. It just won't load on my computer. And I'm of a sneaking suspicion that JWoww was replaced with a doppelganger.
Oh my god, like Avril Lavigne.
Yeah, because he came back and did not have his mustache.
What?
Which is kind of an odd flip because usually the evil twin has the mustache.
That is weird.
But yeah, so that's kind of throwing me for a loop. I think there's something going on with JWoww that we're not really.
Either that or we're in the upside down.
We're in the upside down. How would we have ended up in the upside down? How would we have both ended up in the upside down? Or is it just me in the upside down?
I think, like, in this one timeline of reality, we're both in the upside down. But I don't have an answer for you.
Well, in that case, I mean, there's infinite timelines of reality
Yeah.
if you're going to prescribe to that.
I do.
You do? Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're gonna get right into it. Maybe you don't want to plug anything or anything, Alexis. You started a story or a crazy. You're doing your yeah.
Okay, fine.
Do some plugging.
I feel like I always like.
I know.
Okay.
I'll give you 5 seconds.
Oh God. Watch the teaser for Pretty Hurts. You can go like the page on Facebook and stay tuned for Crazy Eights.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, that was good. All right.
Okay,
Sweet
thank
plug. Well, we brought Alexis in today to discuss some conspiracy theories. There's been a lot of stuff, some weird shit going on over the last couple years, especially. And the JFK files were released just a few days ago or last week sometime, of which they still, well, a little bit. It's
Cool.
like of which they still they didn't release like 30 pages of it still.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like. I don't know, stuff like JFK, it seems almost too like the idea of a conspiracy theory that the president of the United States was assassinated. Like that doesn't sound like a conspiracy theory to me. That sounds like just like normal human stuff that happens.
I agree, and I don't know a whole lot about this, so I'll have to wait for your little information pieces on it. But I agree. Like, what's a conspiracy theory about like someone assassinated the president? Like, that's just the fact of what happened.
It's just. I mean, I don't know like the intricate details. The main idea is that. Sorry, I was eating a grape. That JFK,
ASMR.
that that JFK was assassinated by somebody who was not. Harvey Oswald.
Oh, yes.
From the grassy knoll, possibly a government conspiracy to like kill the president. And everybody's like, well, that's craziness. And I'm like, why is that craziness? Like it's the idea that a government would conspire against its leader.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's happened many, many times all throughout human history. So I don't see why people that think something like that or even like entertain the possibility of it, like I think there's a difference between firmly believing in a conspiracy theory and just being like, well, yeah, that sounds plausible to me.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't firmly believe that the president was assassinated by a government conspiracy, but it sounds plausible. So if it came to light that was the case, I would not be surprised at all.
Literally, anytime anyone's like, or maybe it was the government, and I'm like, that's definitely the answer.
Well, like I have a list of stuff that people used to regard as conspiracy theories.
Okay.
And have been proven true. Okay, so MK Ultra was a conspiracy. There was a conspiracy theory that the U.S. government was like conducting mind control experiments on its own citizens and stuff like that, to basically try to give people superpowers. And it was proven that was true. Like they were trying to do it. They had a bunch of like ex-Nazi scientists that were helping them and like crazy shit like that. Like it was proven to be true. It was a program called MK Ultra. The diamond price artificially inflated. Everybody was always like under the impression that the diamonds were artificially inflated, that the companies that were mining them were like stockpiling them and just releasing them, which they totally were. And businesses do like all over the world now. It's just like common practice. Like that's why the oil market crash happened, because they aren't actually adhering to the proper principles of what the market is. Like and so yeah, there's like a bunch of crazy shit. U.S. public health used 399 black men for experimentation of syphilis between 1932 and 1972. They like knew they had syphilis, purposely didn't tell them just to see what would happen to these people.
I was like just reading about that in my AIDS research. That'll make more sense when this podcast continues.
Yeah. And so one of the scariest ones didn't actually happen, but Congress in the 1960s actually put forth a proposal to fake terror attacks, not fake, but like plant terror attacks on U.S. soil and blame Cuba to like draw up Cuban rah, right? It ended up getting rejected by President Kennedy, but there were people that were there that wanted to get that done. And like, you go back to like the 70s and stuff, and you listen to like the stereotypical hippie who's like, oh man, the government's like always watching us, man. Like the government is fucking always watching us. Like all of our stuff is constantly being seen, and we just kind of like, we just kind of deal with it now. I don't know, it's weird.
I know, and I feel like I put the tape over my webcam, like on my laptop, but then I have all my location services on in my iPhone.
Yeah.
So like,
I find that to be an exercise in futility. Yeah. Like I get it. I probably should, but like, you know what? If some person wants to rip into my computer camera and watch me jerk off, like that's totally up to them. Like I don't want to see that, so
all they're gonna see is me just like watching old episodes of The Office for like 10-hour increments at a time.
Can this girl ever get sick of The Office? She's starting it again?
It's the same episode.
You watched this 2 days ago.
So it's even more depressing.
Yeah, no, I get that way too. So yeah, I mean, Alexis, you brought a couple topics to talk about. So why don't you bring up your first thing and educate me on your conspiracy theory?
Are you gonna edit this so I sound smart?
If you sound dumb in parts, I might.
Good. Let's start with the more fun one, like the Mandela effect. Okay. Because that's just pretty. It's like a good icebreaker.
Yeah, it's kind of light.
Okay, so I know that we all probably kind of know about this, but I'll just recap it. And I'm sorry if I pronounce some names wrong, but I think I'll be fine. Okay, so the Mandela effect is a phenomenon where a small or large group of people remember a detail or an event different from what actually happened, thus inferring the possibility of alternate realities or timelines of history. The name refers to people remembering that Nelson Mandela had died in prison in the 1980s, when actually he survived long after his release and died in 2013. For me, when I kind of first became aware of this or heard about it for the first time was the infamous Berenstain Bears case, which is wild. Yeah. So for me, I remember the Berenstain Bears being Berenstein. Like Stein. Yeah, Stein. Like, very clearly, I remember this, because I had hundreds of the books when I was growing up. Same. Yeah. And they're in doctors.
Maybe like
there's
dozens.
Literally so many books. Yeah. And I watch the show all the time. Like, I remember it so clearly. And then all of a sudden, people are freaking out because it's spelled AIN everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so so the first time this was actually brought up was actually in like a dreadlock dedicated forum back in 2009. It's
Really?
the first time somebody was like, "Hey,
Wait a
what?"
second.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
funny. Some dude just smoking weed. Wait a second.
Which is probably why it was dismissed.
yeah.
He didn't understand why the pronunciation of his favorite childhood book had changed, like why people were saying it differently. But then it kind of got like shut down by like neo-Nazi commentators. So some weird things were said.
Because it was like a Jewish name or something?
I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
That was like, and then it kind of went into that direction, and the point was lost in that
Gets
forum.
into,
yeah, you know how dreadlock forums are. Like,
Yeah.
like
Very political, the dreadlock forums.
just run by neo-Nazis.
Skinheads and dreadlock.
Exactly. And so in 2011, it kind of popped up again on like a satire website. And then this guy actually wrote a whole kind of piece about it. And even though it was a joke, he raised a very interesting point. So I have a little excerpt of it here.
Hit me with it.
So at some point between the years 1986 and 2011, someone traveled back in time and inadvertently altered the timeline of human history so that the Berenstain Bears somehow became the Berenstain Bears, he wrote. This is why everyone remembers the name incorrectly. It was Berenstain when we were kids, but at some point when we weren't paying attention, someone went back in time and rippled our life experience ever so slightly. So kind of following into that belief that if you go back in time and like step on a bug or something. The butterfly. Yeah, exactly, the butterfly. Like in The Simpsons Trios of Horror, we've all seen it. Homer uses like the toaster and, you know,
Yeah.
We all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we gather.
Okay.
Picking up what you're dropping. Smelling what you're cooking.
Amazing. Oh, sorry. I'm like sick.
Gross.
I know. The next appearance of the theory came in the form of a 2012 post on the blog The Wood Between Worlds by a user named Reese called the Berenstain Bears. We are living in our own parallel universe. And this person, I actually don't know if it's a man or a woman, wrote this huge thing delving into like the math behind it, and it gets very like technical, and I have no idea. It sounds very true, everything he's saying, or she, but I don't know about like quantum physics, so I couldn't tell you if it's true or not. So basically the summary of what they're saying is that there are at least two universes, the STEIN universe and the STAIN universe, and that for a while we were living in the EN universe, but now we've like shifted into the AN universe. I think it was kind of like forgotten about for a while. Like that was back in like 2012, and then nobody kind of thought about it. And then it resurfaced in the past couple years when LP from Run the Jewels went on this like huge like Twitter
LP?
rampage. Yeah.
From what?
Run the Jewels, the rapper.
I don't know
No?
what that
Okay.
is. Sorry.
Okay. Well, we can
I'm
listen
pop
to
culture illiterate sometimes.
We can listen to them later.
Okay,
I'm sure
yeah.
you've heard of. I'm
Maybe.
sure you would recognize them.
Okay.
So he like went on this long like Twitter rant about it, and now there's like this whole subreddit, which I don't know, you may have like landed upon in your brief
Probably
search
not.
about it.
No.
There's like a whole subreddit thread about not only like the Berenstain Bears, but like a bunch of other like crazy Mandela effects, and I have some other examples after.
Okay.
So people who dispute this theory are the family, the Berenstain family. Actually, the article I got a lot of this from was a Vice article, and they actually talked to the son, like Michael Berenstain, who's like Stan and Jan's son.
Okay.
And he seemed, I don't know if this is the way it was edited, but he seemed like pretty pissed off in the interview that like they were even asking him, which I guess makes sense. Like your family works really hard to
it's like their
make
legacy.
a name for themselves, and then people are like, no.
No, like, are you sure that's your name?
And basically the whole interview, he's like, do you want to see my birth certificate? Do you want to see my father's birth certificate? But I guess that even when his father was a kid, people always wanted to call him like Baron, like Steen, like EIN.
Yeah, well, I think that is where that like the whole Mandela effect. And again, to say like the Mandela effect is more of just like humans noticing patterns and prescribing to them, does not mean that you don't believe in parallel universes and stuff like that. Like you can be one or the other. Yeah, I certainly think that, especially for the Berenstain Bears thing, or Berenstain Bears, it's purely because we're way more used to seeing Steen as a suffix for a name.
Whoa, and that's what Dr. Henry L. Roediger, a leading expert in false memories in North America, he said the exact same thing. He's like, misremembering one letter in a long name is a major league false memory. He's not sure it's a major league false memory. My guess is that in this case, you're so used to seeing Stien, Frankenstein, Goldenstein, Einstein.
Yeah. It's like it even happens on I think on a micro level, like one-on-one, when you have like a friend that you know that you've met multiple times, and for some reason you always want to call them a different name.
Yeah.
Like I have people like that I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, your name is Mitch, but I keep wanting to call you Mark for whatever reason. Like I don't know.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I have horrible memory, and I always remember things happening completely wrong from what they actually did.
I do have a couple cases of this Mandela effect for myself.
Yeah.
The Shazam one, which I don't know if you're going to bring up, I definitely fell victim to that.
What?
There's a movie called Kazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal. And people remember a movie called Shazam starring Sinbad.
Yeah.
And I totally remember that movie, Sinbad.
That's one of
but then again, it's probably just brain association with Shaq and Kazam, Shazam. And I don't know why Sinbad got floated in there, because I don't know if I even remember Sinbad as being popular in anything else as a kid.
I mean, it
That's
really
like
doesn't
literally
make sense.
the only memory I have of Sinbad is from something that he didn't.
Was in that
he wasn't
movie,
even in.
right? Yeah. I mean, it really wouldn't make sense.
Another one that actually I kind of just cracked for myself the other day was, I remember growing up, every poppy seed muffin was almond flavored, not lemon flavored.
That's weird.
And they were so much better. Like so fucking good. And this lemon, and then it felt like I turned like 13 or 14, and all of a sudden every single poppy seed muffin was lemon poppy seed, and I hated it. And I kept I'm still in this constant search of an almond poppy seed muffin somewhere in the universe. And in talking to, actually, I think it was Morgan.
Yeah.
I kind of figured out, like, wait, I think it's because my mom used to make almond poppy seed muffins all the time. Like, she used to do a bunch of baking and stuff like that. And then maybe eventually just kind of stopped baking and just bought the muffins every once in a while. And I got, like, associated, I don't know, different memories into thinking that we bought these almond poppy seed muffins that, like, never existed in stores. But I, like, for my whole life was vehement about this, and all my friends were just like, dude, nobody knows what the fuck you're talking about. Never had that type of muffin before in my life. Like, okay.
I also never have, so
yeah, there you go.
That's definitely just your house.
I don't know. Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Yeah, I have a couple of examples here. One of them is that people think the Monopoly Man, whose name is Rich Uncle Pennybags. That was news to me.
Oh, really?
Rich did not
Uncle Pennybags?
Yeah.
Nice.
That he has a monocle, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
The tip of Pikachu's tail isn't black, which...
No, it's like brown, isn't it?
It's just yellow.
What? Oh.
This is a visual.
I thought he had like a brown... A brown sort of...
And I definitely thought there was something, but...
Interesting.
There's so many here. This one kind of fucked me up. Hannibal Lecter never says, "Hello, Clarice." That's not a line in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, there's a few movie things like that. And a lot of it is built on just different marketing and stuff like that too, right? Where they like condensed lines or change lines for marketing purposes, or like Mirror Mirror on the Wall.
Yeah, that one's here,
like was never actually in the movie, but is in the original like Grim Tale or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely I mean, again, I think it's just kind of more mass pattern recognition and association than living in parallel universes, but
that's not really
it's not as exciting. Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that we're not living in a universe that is parallel of another universe. But if that's what you prescribe to, then there is a universe where the Berenstain Bears is the Berenstain Bears, and the Berenstein Bears is the Berenstein Bears, and that's the only thing that's different.
Maybe.
No, that's the theory. Infinite
Yeah.
universes means like literally there's a universe where every single small detail is changed, which is fucking insane to think about.
Because now, and it's like hard to say what's real now at this point, right? But people are showing pictures of like it's spelled EIN. Like they have copies of old books. I don't know.
Well, I mean, but like that's the thing is stuff like that can even go as far as to getting into like, well, just a production house or a printing house that thinks that that's the right way to spell it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, when it goes into a different language or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different cases of things like that. So, the Mandela effect is interesting for sure.
It is.
It's definitely something that's happened.
And it happens frequently.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure everyone has remembered something just completely wrong from what actually happened.
Oh, totally.
Until someone's finally corrected you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you and your poppy seed.
Yeah.
Happens.
I was living in a totally different world, different reality. Which I guess, like, in a way, I was, like, living in a different reality.
Yeah.
You know, because I did firmly believe that was the case and that everything else was crazy. Okay, tell me this.
Okay.
You might not know this.
Maybe not.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay. You might be too young then. Okay, I was born in the U.S.
Yeah.
And we came here when I was like 4. And I remember, I guess you wouldn't know the answer to this question. Shit. Okay, well, in the U.S., they had butterscotch dipped cones in Dairy Queen.
Okay.
And they don't have them here.
No, definitely not.
And it infuriated me as a child when we got to the drive-thru the first time. And I was like, I'll have a butterscotch dip cone. They're like, no, just chocolate. Yeah. It's like, this Canada sucks.
Mom.
Why did we move here? I have since grown to love Canada much, much more than any other country in the world. So, but yeah, that is totally beside the point because it has nothing to do with anything. Back to some conspiracy theories.
Yeah, your turn. You enlighten me.
Okay. Well, the Rothschilds one is interesting.
Okay.
Because again, it's kind of just a case like the JFK thing of like people looking at history and going like, wow, these people did this thing and it ended up being kind of really bad and they got really wealthy off of it. And so now they have a lot of wealth and power. And it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of just like how our system works, you know, for better or worse. Like, so the Rothschilds were the 5 sons of this Jewish man. They grew up in like the ghetto, in a Jewish ghetto in London, I want to say. I could be wrong. Yeah, it was in London. And he started a bank. He started kind of being just like a lender and ended up basically kind of financing the England and France wars, like the Napoleonic Wars. And then after that, got his 5 sons and was like, hey, you guys should go set up banks in these 5 countries, kind of like I've done here. Because this was like a new thing. Like people hadn't really done this type of like lending credit thing before. In fact, it was like kind of against a lot of like Christian beliefs and stuff like that. So that's why there was a lot of anti-Semitism and stuff associated with it. And so they set up these banks in Italy, in Austria, in Germany, and in France. And and basically kind of started doing the same thing, and they all got stupid wealthy off of, you know, being creditors to these people, being creditors to these countries, to wars, and they started financing war basically, and like as despicable as that is, kind of, you know, looking back on it, it is war profiteering, and you know, it is like the birth of this bankrupt system that we are left with now. And yeah, these people have a lot of wealth and power now, and they're very spread out kind of around the world because their family's been diluted like over generations. So I don't think they're as powerful now. But people are of this like opinion that they're just like, oh, there's like these 3 people that are like literally like pulling the strings of the world, and they're lizard people and stuff like this. And it's like, that's okay. So that's where it gets like overblown, you know? It's like, I can buy, of course there's like a lot of wealth and power concentrated in a small group of people. Like, that is just like a reality of our world. You don't need to tell me that they're lizard people that are trying to control my mind to make me think that like it's bad, really, or that like, and I don't consider that to be a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. It's just a outcome of what happened. Yeah. You know? And anyways, so that's the Rothschilds. They're kind of an interesting case.
Definitely, and I think that's what's so much of the foundation of conspiracy theories are even like... Oh, I thought you were doing that to me. Yeah, he just like held up a finger. I was like, what? It's okay.
No, Boris is whining.
Like, okay, I'll stop talking then. I feel like that's so much of the foundation of conspiracy theories are like built upon, is that it's not hard to believe that people who are super powerful just know information that we don't, right? So it's just not that much of a stretch to be like, well, of course that probably happened, because they probably know a lot of crazy shit.
Right. And like when I started looking into the Rothschilds, I kind of got a little bit into these other sort of like secret societies and stuff, you know, Skull and Bones and Illuminati and Bilderberg Group and stuff. And some of them are like, especially like something like the Bilderberg Group, people are like, it's this like this few group of people that like sit together and make all of the decisions. And I started reading this or like listening to these things about it, and like it's like, it's elected government leaders that are by invite only, and financiers of the world and powerful people that get together and discuss like, you know, the world economics going forward. And I was like, that sounds like a good idea. Like, why is this a bad thing? I don't understand why that's a bad thing. So like, okay, like, isn't that why we put those people in those positions to do those things? Like, I'm not like, I also think there is like definitely dark sides to stuff like that. Like, you know, the secret like camp meetings where like, I'm sure like when you hear about all this stuff that goes on in like even like boardrooms in like Hollywood and stuff, like I'm sure there is like violent and terrible things that go on behind like closed doors in political circles that are just like would be appalling to even hear about. Like even stuff I've read that is like rumored or like makes my stomach churn on certain things. So like I don't want to like condone that at all. I'm just saying like it's just like I shrug it at it because it's just kind of like it's an evil of what's happening in our world. Like what do you got?
The next one I have, it's not as fun as the Mandela effect, but it's interesting. So it's the CIA and AIDS. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 which I think a lot of this is hella wild. So I'll just start with a brief synopsis that I got from Time magazine that they did. I don't know if you were looking at that at all. When it was like the 40th anniversary of the moon landing, they did this whole piece about like the top conspiracy theories. It was really cool.
Cool.
It was cool.
I should check it out.
It was interesting. It was pretty brief, but then you can do your own research. And
you did a lot of book learn for this. You got sources and shit.
I do. Take this
good.
very seriously.
Yeah, I like that. It's good.
Well, it just works out that I just like all this stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so since the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention first reported HIV and AIDS in 1981, rumors have persisted that the deadly virus was created by the CIA to wipe out homosexuals and African Americans. Even today, the conspiracy theory has a number of high-profile believers. Former South African President Thabo Mbeki once supported the theory, disputing scientific claims that the virus originated in Africa and accusing the U.S. government of manufacturing the disease in military labs. When she won the Nobel Peace Prize, Kenyan ecologist Wangari Maathai, and I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, used the international spotlight to support that theory as well. Others insist that the government deliberately injected gay men with the virus during the 1978 hepatitis B experiments in New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Still, others point to Richard Nixon, who combined the U.S.'s Army Biowarfare Department with the National Cancer Institute in 1971. So that was when he converted the warfare facility in Maryland to the Cancer Research Center.
Okay.
Which he claimed was like a war on cancer, but people thought he was manufacturing AIDS, or the U.S. government was. So now, and it's still an internationally recognized center for cancer and AIDS research. Through the co-discoverers of HIV, Dr. Robert Gallo of the National Cancer Institute and Dr. Luc Montagnier of the Pasteur Institute in Paris don't agree on its origins, most members of the scientific community believe the virus jumped from monkeys to humans sometime during the 1930s. So that's kind of like the summary of it. And then what are your opinions? Then we can launch into more.
Yeah, that one's an interesting one for me, 'cause that's one of the ones that kind of I think floats on the edge of sounds certainly plausible. Sounds certainly possible, but is like so disgusting that you don't want to believe it, you know? And like it's kind of like like you mentioned before, it kind of mixes in with the thing I brought up with the U.S. public health using 400 black men for syphilis experimentation. Like when this type of stuff comes to light, you kind of just like, you can't really put it past them, I guess, is the way that I kind of think about those types of things. So yeah, I wouldn't surprise me if that was the case.
Well, especially when who are the victims of HIV?
Yeah.
African American and gay people. Who did America like hate the most at that time, and still arguably kind of do?
And they were doing the same thing with like drug prohibition to get rid of African American and gay and like just hippie people in
like
general.
How they brought, what is it?
And like McCarthyism was just like hunting down communists and jailing people and stuff. Like, you know, that stuff is only like 60, 70 years ago. Like it's not that long ago. And people tend to just like forget that, or like think that we're beyond that type of like behavior now. And it's like, no, like what are you thinking? Like we've been doing it for thousands of years.
And that's so a lot of people who argue against this, because obviously a big part of people who believe this are like African American and gay people. A lot of arguments against it just claim that this idea is just stemmed from like African Americans' distrust towards government, which I'm not gonna comment on as a white person, but I think that's a lot of the arguments against it. Also, getting kind of more into things here, many believe that there's actually a cure for HIV that the government just like isn't releasing to the common public, and a lot of people think that Magic Johnson, who's one of the more famous people living with HIV, think that he's actually receiving treatment that they're not, and that's how he's been able to survive 25 plus years with this disease. So that's kind of interesting too.
I mean, like I believe I remember hearing about like some pretty significant breakthroughs with HIV and AIDS over the last few years, where they had like cured it in one person or a couple people. I remember hearing about. Or gotten rid of HIV, not AIDS itself, but HIV.
It seemed like they were getting like really close, and then I don't know if you remember this. This is like what like re-shook me all over again, like 3 years ago. It was in 2014 when that Malaysia airline crashed. That plane it crashed, and on that plane were like 100 people going to the AIDS
and
conference.
That was like pretty quickly after they had rlaned that information, wasn't it? I remember that too.
And so like among that flight was Joe Lange, a top AIDS researcher and former International AIDS Society president, and Britton Glenn Thomas, a spokesperson for the World Health Organization, and he used to be a journalist for BBC. So that was crazy. Yeah,
see stuff like that, like again, like
that's weird.
It's and people go like, whoa, conspiracy theories. Like people have done that shit, man. Like it's not out of human nature, so why discount it? Yeah, I remember. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
hearing about that when it first happened. I was like, "What? That is."
I had to I'm so glad that we actually did this because it gave me motivation to go and actually research the facts about it, because I was just talking to someone about this 2 weeks ago, but I didn't have any of the information. I'm like, no, there was definitely a plane crash that had people on it who were important, and they were like, okay, but I didn't have any of the actual facts about it, but. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it doesn't surprise me, and again, it wouldn't surprise me. I remember I have this book actually that is it's in my bathroom. It's called 1,000 Ways That the World Is Trying to Kill You or something like that. And there's been a bunch of instances through history of government experiments gone wrong that almost wiped out all the corn population in the world, and somebody in the Russian military preventing nuclear war by not shooting a missile when they thought that when their radars were going off, and he for some reason thought it was a false alarm, which it turned out to be. And he didn't allow this. They were saying no, you have to push the button, and he was like, no, I'm not doing it because I just feel like this is not going to happen. And then he didn't do it, and there was no nuclear war. This is that's one guy's 30-second pressure cooker decision away from total annihilation. Is insane.
The extent of my knowledge about nuclear weapons in North America is all from John Oliver.
You probably don't have a terrible.
I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah,
episode.
I definitely have.
He's
pretty
crazy.
informative.
He is. It's but that was crazy. That was a wild episode. I was like, holy.
Yeah, he's those guys are doing the good things. Him and Stephen Colbert and
definitely.
Seth Meyers
They've
and
kind
Samantha
of
Bee.
they've figured out how to relay information in a way that my millennial mind can listen to and focus on.
It's true. Well, we talked about it with, I don't know if you know Oz Garip.
No.
Okay. He's a comedian, and we talked with him a couple weeks ago, and we talked with him about that, just kind of how those people have. Well, it's more accidental, I think, than anything, that it was kind of just forced upon them. Politics and news got so ridiculous that they had to make fun of it, and through that they just the truth is funny, right? So they're just saying the truth. I don't know. Anyways, we're diverge a little bit, but we've been talking for a little bit, so maybe we should take a break. Okay. And then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit of alien tech and moon landings, conspiracies maybe, and we'll see what else you got, and have some more coffee, and we'll come back.
Amazing.
All right, we'll be right back on the Slack line with Alexis Makepeace.
We're standing ready. Lord, I could take a guess. Oh, would you please? We are ready. I'm lifted by the Spirit's peace. I guess I'm never going home. Never joining St. John. Could never be alone. Well, I guess I'm well adjusted. But the pains, they never leave, except for my feet. I keep my arms in my suitcases, and my shoulders halfway down in the ground. Definitely something cooking. The sky keeps on looking. I hear people shouting your name. I hear people shouting your name. People shouting your name. People shouting your name.
All right, we are back on the Slack line with just the boss today.
The boss is coming.
Made up dumb fairy tale name, you.
JWoww is he's disappeared. I don't know where he is. It's kind of freaking me out a little bit.
Where'd he go?
I'm pretty sure he's been replaced by a evil doppelganger.
Sans mustache.
Sans his mustache, and yeah.
Do you want the mustache on or off?
Off, please.
Too bad.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we're back here with Alexis Makepeace. We are chatting some conspiracy theories, kind of in line with the disappearance of my co-host. And yeah, we spoke about the Mandela effect. We talked about what else did we get into?
You said some stuff.
Yeah, I said some stuff about the Rothschilds. And what did you get into again?
CIA,
CIA
and AIDS.
Yeah.
Which is...
Yeah, the CIA has done a lot of funky stuff over the years, you know.
I would like go back and just because I like just so briefly touched on that. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many, like, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's definitely something that like I said before, I've kind of thrown the category of like so grossly evil that I kind of just want to hope that it's not true, but pretty sure is, you know.
Because that one goes into like Richard Nixon and like
Yeah.
that whole like it's just
So we're gonna veer a little bit into some higher level stuff. I mean, we've been talking stuff that is probably kind of on the verge of most likely true or close to. Let's talk a little alien tech.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's a lot of thoughts that ancient buildings and ruins and structures that are, you know, aligned with the stars and celestial bodies and things like that are the work of alien beings that came to us very early on and helped our early civilizations, you know, be what they were and stuff. And I think that there's definitely other life in the universe. I think that would be pretty ignorant to not think that, but I don't know. Like, I look back at these things that people consider alien tech, and I kind of just think that people were just, like, our civilizations were once, you know, quite a bit more advanced than we give them credit for, and they could do things that we don't think they could have done because, well, how could they have done this without, you know, the way that we create electricity or whatever? It's like, well, there are many ways to create electricity and that type of thing, and there's you know evidence that the pyramids were a form of like what was it, like electromagnetism. You know, they used like the flooding of aquifers that are underneath them, and like the material at the top of it was capped with like a marble or something, and it was basically like this huge battery that charged like their you know their lamps or whatever they had around there. Like, I don't know, but like, yeah, I just think that we were once, you know, pretty high level civilizations that grew in these small pockets and just like retained their own knowledge, and so they didn't really share a lot of stuff. And so yeah, while we had, you know, nomadic peoples like Mongols and like North American natives and stuff like that, we also had these small pockets of like ancient civilizations in like Mesopotamia and Central America and stuff like that just, you know, had medicines, and we think that they're like doing like witchcraft or things like that. It's no different than us combining like herbs and things into echinacea tablets and shit like that. Like, it's all it's just like different words for it, you know? And so yeah, like I just think that we were once really, you know, high level people, and our knowledge kind of all got wiped out by, you know, Christian crusades and people burning a bunch of knowledge and all that type of stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
Although I could like fuck with the theory of aliens building the pyramids to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, yeah, I don't know. That's the type of thing that's like, again, if it came to light that
Mhm.
aliens came here and helped people build the pyramids, I would be like, huh, yeah, that makes sense.
Because aren't there like hieroglyphics of spaceships and stuff on the pyramids or like inside the pyramids?
Well, there's hieroglyphics of like people with dog heads, like,
True.
you know, and it's in an ancient language that we just kind of hope we understand, you know, through like cryptography and stuff like that. Like, people are just are deciphering this language by recognizing patterns through it, but like, you know, if the root of their assumptions of the language are wrong, then like the whole thing is wrong, right? And
True.
so, and like they could be talking, those things could be stories told no different than our like comic books and stuff.
Yeah.
I have a cartoon that I made called Religions of the Future, and it's just like a one-frame cartoon, and it's these two people that are one's dressed in like a Superman outfit and one's dressed in a Batman outfit, and they're like citing comic books as like when these people like saved our planet and stuff like that, you know, that we dug them up like 2,000 years ago, the tombs of these great adventures of Batman and Superman. And it's like, well, it's no different than ancient religions and stuff like that. So I saw a calculator that they found that was in like ancient Greece that was like way ahead of its time. It's like much more complicated than a clock was, and clocks weren't invented for like thousands of years later. And it like tracked all the tracked the planets and the stars like incredibly precisely. And that's just something that I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it's like they had nothing better to do than sit around and make shit like that. Like,
it's very true.
And stare at the stars, you know, like, and again, like these people genetically, they're not far off from us, you know, like 1,000 years or 2,000 years or whatever is not long enough biologically to really have like a huge, like intelligence capability difference. Not that they didn't have, like, we obviously have more knowledge available to us, but like the capability of learning something and doing something was obviously still there. So, yeah, I think stuff like that can just be chalked up to human ingenuity that was lost in the Dark Ages.
It's a very compelling point.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true stoner.
That's funny because actually I remember hearing Joe Rogan talk about that, and I had thought about it beforehand, but I remember he put it so eloquently that I was like, yes, Joe Rogan, you do it right. Just, I don't know if you've ever seen that Netflix special of his, the old one from like 2001 or something. It's great. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Joe Rogan, shout out.
Everything he does is just like,
that's pretty great.
I love him because, and I'm sure this is why everyone else likes him too, but a lot of the things he says, I'm like, I don't totally agree with that, but he always will hear like the other argument, you know, when he brings people on that disagrees with him.
It's true.
He's always open to, like, very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, some people would maybe criticize that he's not, like, he wouldn't attack like a really bad idea really harshly, but like I mean, if you're going to talk with somebody, you're not really going to ever get a good discussion out of them if you're just going to constantly, you know, snipe on little issues that, like, okay, so like while I'm trying to make a point, I said the wrong term or something that might throw you, like, well, don't harp on that, and like let's just, other than the guy that can't dig himself out of that hole on stage. We weren't talking about that on there.
That makes no sense. Yeah, you can't have me on here talking about that. Okay.
No, yeah. It is recorded, but I'll cut it out.
Oh God, no! They're gonna use that against me. Illuminati confirmed.
Yes,
but
or maybe it's just a conspiracy I'll use against you.
The thing, and exactly like what you were saying, like at the end of the day, that's all two people can do is have an intelligent conversation about something. But at the end of the day, I'm going to believe what I'm going to believe, and you're going to believe what you're going to believe. And I'm probably not going to change your mind, but I might be able to make you think of it in a different way.
Yeah, I wish people would change their minds more often. I wish people would admit to changing their minds more often. Like, I think a lot of times people get really like angry about something in a discussion, and then like over time maybe they'll come around to whatever the idea is, or even in that moment come around to the idea, but just like no one would admit that oh, we've been wrong. I've been wrong the whole time, especially like online.
Oh.
People can't just be like, oh yeah, you know what? I've been being an idiot. Sorry. I'm just going to walk away from this. There's just none of that anymore. But
My God, my like real grandmother who recently added me on Facebook just shared this like link yesterday about why people who are transgender are like lying, and God created man and woman in the image they were supposed to be. And I was like, oh my Atlanta. Then people were commenting like, no, this is actually not true. And
Yeah.
it's like, but the Bible. Well.
yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to change people's minds, especially
It's
online.
true. Yeah. And you know, it kind of goes back, kind of comes back into what we're talking about, because there are a lot of people that will just, like, there are people that die believing the earth is flat. You know, there's still, there's an increasing amount of people that believe the earth is flat. Like, that's insane to me.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happens. Like, I watched, in preparation for this episode, I watched a flat earth conspiracy theory thing.
Wild.
It was like a 20-minute long YouTube video.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this. And I sat through about 7 minutes of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
Like, there's like 6 points made in the first few minutes. I was just like, it's just not a fact. So,
But
sorry.
it's so crazy when things are just presented and like and said in a logical way. People are like, oh.
But it's like, yes, the whole thing was like, how can it be true that we're on a sphere that is flying through space at this amount of speed, revolving around the sun that's flying through space at this amount of speed, revolving around the Milky Way, revolving like at this speed, when it's plain that we can see with our eyes and our ears that the horizon is flat and like the world like the universe revolves around this thing. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? Like the egocentric view of that is just like, oh, everything is like, it looks like it's all revolving around me, so it must be.
Exactly. Well, this is the way it looks like to me.
Yeah. So and just like, and then so that's the way it is. Like, it drives me nuts. But yeah, so that I got into the moon landing thing, which you know, I've actually like, I watched a thing not long ago on Netflix that was pretty compelling as far as evidence of like not being like, or that it might have not been there and stuff like that. And I was like, like, I don't buy that we didn't go to the moon, but that was like, I could see how people can get swayed by that. Like, even I'm like, interesting.
It's interesting enough that you're like, perhaps, and you look into it, you know.
That's true. And then I did look into it, and it's interesting to come at it from a filmmaking perspective now, because that was the rumor that they did on a soundstage. And when you look into it, with the knowledge we have of that industry, you realize it was impossible then.
Yeah.
They couldn't have set up the lights to do that. Like, they just didn't have the ability. They would have had to have like a huge fucking wall of like high wattage lights that are just like blasting from like really far away, because of the way the shadows are on the moon. They're just like long and flat and all the way across this huge plane. They would have had to have this whole wall of lights.
That's
or just
interesting.
have the sun, you know, like completely undiffused light, right?
I see what you're saying.
And then there was so they had this computer model that recreated like all this atmosphere and all, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna try and recreate this photo of him coming off, because one of the main conspiracies is that as Buzz Aldrin is coming out of the thing and Neil Armstrong's taking a picture of him, he's in the shadow of the lander, and so you shouldn't be able to see him in the picture. And what actually happened is, again, from a filmmaking perspective, we know this, is that Neil Armstrong was wearing like a super reflective white spacesuit, which bounced the light onto Buzz Aldrin enough to like actually light him. And when they were modeling this thing, they couldn't pinpoint why it didn't look quite right for the longest time until they thought of that, and they put in the figure, and they like put in like, you know, all the properties of the suit and all that stuff, and it looked like exactly like the photo, and they're like, oh, I guess that's what it was.
I've actually like never heard of anyone use that in an argument. Just like basic filming laws. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if the argument is that they filmed it.
Yeah.
Then
No, totally. No, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And then the
a
big
good point.
another one is, well, you can't see any stars in the sky. Like, it's a perfectly black sky and there's no atmosphere. Shouldn't you be able to see them? And they're like, well, if you're gonna take a picture, it's actually daylight on the moon at that time, right? Like harsh daylight, because there's no diffused light from the sun. And so all the cameras would have to be adjusted for harsh daylight, and thus would not pick up dark stars way in the background. And if you really amp up the exposure on these photographs, you can actually see stars in the background. But like the moon and the people are like super, super blown out. It's just like a white fucking blob. So yeah, interesting. Photography knowledge, debunking the moon landing,
just
conspiracy theorists.
Just facts of life.
Just facts. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I got as far as.
Well, what do you think about like Easter Island and stuff? Like
Easter Island, yeah, that one's an interesting. I mean, like those things are wood, like they're just like trees that are in the ground that they've carved, right? So they're just carvings. Like I don't see the difference between those and like totem poles, right? Yeah. Things that float like make me go well are like Stonehenge. Like how the fuck did they get those rocks up there? Like that Stonehenge is the one that throws me for a loop a bit.
That one's like a hard one to like wrap your head around for sure.
But I'm I think I've never actually delved that deep into it, but I think I've seen little things that like seem to indicate that
like,
they
could
do it
watch
with
Ancient Aliens.
I don't think that's the best source for the facts on the matter. If there are facts on the matter, I don't know. Like I think that there's probably a mechanical explanation for being able to get those rocks on top of each other.
I'm sure.
But where's the fun in that? Couldn't have been like druids or something?
What do you think of people?
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Fuck you. Okay, what do you think of people who like swear that they've been abducted by aliens? Obviously, some of them are making it, but what about the people who like genuinely are like, this happened to me? Like they actually think it.
Yeah. That's honestly one of my biggest fears growing up.
That you're gonna be abducted.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Fire in the Sky?
No.
Okay, so it's this alien abduction movie from like the early 90s, I think, and it is fucking terrifying.
Oh.
And it maybe not is that scary now.
Yeah,
I've heard from other people that it's really scary. I watched it with my dad when I was like maybe 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And there's one scene where he like wakes up after being abducted and he's being like experimented on by like a bunch of fucking creepy looking aliens. And it stuck with me for the rest of my life. And like to this day, I do not want to watch alien abduction movies, even though I like love alien movies. I remember watching, have you seen The Fourth Kind?
Yeah.
I watched the trailer for The Fourth Kind by myself in like the darkness of my basement suite when I was like going through school. I was like 21 or whatever. And after watching, I was like, why did you watch this? And in the trailer, I remember they flashed 333 a lot on clocks and stuff like that. My girlfriend at the time called me that night at 3:33 in the morning. My phone rang at 3:33 in the morning that night.
God.
And I didn't answer it the first time. And then she called me back again, and I told her the story. Like, fuck. Anyways, that's kind of a big sidetrack.
That's weird.
Yeah. I would say that in all likelihood, it's more of a dream state where you can't move. That people are having a dream of being abducted.
Like sleep paralysis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because that's like one of the symptoms that a lot of them describe, right? And
yeah, have you seen the
I've
nightmare?
definitely experienced stuff like that I physically felt while I was sleeping and I felt like was really happening.
Oh my god, I could literally talk about this for like 45 minutes, so I don't know if we want to like
we can
start
diverge for sure, yeah.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Yeah. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, we'll take another break while Alexis goes to the bathroom.
all my kin. The water
bathroom break on the Slack line, and we are getting into alien abductions and sleep paralysis potentially here. That how those things relate. I was thinking how I think most people. I'm not saying that anybody's been abducted by aliens. I think it's highly unlikely that aliens have even been here. Yeah, I think most cases of that are just sleep paralysis and people dreaming while their eyes are open and feeling it, which happens in many different forms.
And I definitely think I agree with that. I've never actually had sleep paralysis personally, but I know a lot of people who have, and I think it's like super interesting. But I remember have you watched like The Nightmare then, the documentary?
No.
Holy fuck. Oh my god. Okay, it's on Netflix. It's on Netflix. You can watch it so easily. It's about sleep paralysis. Okay. You will probably get it after you watch it, especially if you've had it before. But it's actually so scary. But it talks about like people from all over the world and their different experiences with sleep paralysis. And there was this one guy, and it was like literally it was like an alien abduction, and they like reenact it like, but it's really cool. Like it's
cool,
so scary.
Crazy. Yeah. I've had it before. I've experienced it. I've experienced it before. Have you ever seen
the first time?
It was just once.
Oh.
I used to have lucid dreams. And that's kind of what got me into creative writing, is I started journaling my lucid dreams. And I remember my younger brother actually sleepwalked sometimes, just to we shared a room growing up, and he would leave the room and just like sleep at the edge of the stairs for whatever weird reason. But yeah, I remember it was one time, I think I was like 15 or 16. Have you ever seen White Noise?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in White Noise, there's these like 3 sort of shadow figures that follow people through the TVs or whatever. And I remember I had seen that movie either the day before or whatever, and I was sleeping, and in my room, if I was not facing my wall in my bed, I was facing like my closet. My closet was open, and I just remember flipping over in my bed and looking into my open closet and just seeing the 3 figures there.
Oh my god, who sleeps with an open closet though? Like, that's crazy.
Anyways.
Close that door. Oh my god.
I was like, it was a small closet. Anyway, I was like, I kind of had a weird reaction to it, I remember. I kind of just went like, huh. And just like pulled my sheets over my head and flipped around the other way. And then I did physically feel something grab me from the shoulder and start shaking me back and forth. And I started like yelling, and my dad came into my room. His room was like next door to mine, and he came into my room. He was like, "Whoa, what the what's going on in here? Like, what are you yelling about?" And I was like, "Oh man, like I must have been I was having this crazy dream." But I vividly remember physically getting shooken around like that, and like I remember thinking in my head, "This is a dream. This is a dream." But I it was as real as it actually happening. It was crazy.
And did you feel that you couldn't move?
Yeah, I felt like I couldn't do anything about it.
The guy.
Yeah, somebody was just shaking me.
Should we explain sleep paralysis? Or are we just gonna assume that everyone knows what it is? Listen.
Yeah, I guess we can give our rudimentary layman's sleep. You should go, because I think you have probably researched it a bit more.
Again, this is super super general. Yeah, but it's the feeling of being awake but being like paralyzed in your body, and oftentimes it's kind of paired with some type of air quote hallucination, usually like shadow people, or like a cat is a pretty common one, like a black cat figure. Lots of times they're wearing like a hat. That's a really common one, like one of the shadow people has a hat on. And what's interesting about that is kind of getting back to this like Mandela effect of like shared consciousness, is that people from like all over the world at different times in the world see similar things, which is hella weird.
Yeah. How do you think that relates to the sleep paralysis thing, the shared consciousness thing? Just that we all or not all of us, but that many people experience it, or that many people are having like like they kind of associate with the same imagery, like
Yeah,
alien
like
abductions or shadow figures.
Similar
or whatever.
imagery. I just think, especially when you're talking about people from different like timelines and parts of the world, like that's crazy.
Does it bring into question though, like just like the essence of like what a dream is? Like
I think it does,
because dreams are like, I mean, they're just kind of like our neurons firing or something like that, right? And just kind of random information. But most people tend to associate them with like fantastical things, you know? Like the dreams that we tend to remember are the ones that like, I was flying or I was jumping off this thing. Or there's these crazy creatures or like whatever. They're never just like normal.
Yes.
Well, they are. But I think when they are, that's when we get maybe or maybe more prone to something like a sleep paralysis where it feels like it could be like real life. Totally. And there's just one weird thing.
So, yes, definitely. And I think now I'm just promoting this documentary. Watch The Nightmare Everywhere.
Yeah, that's okay.
But if you watch it, it's weird because a lot of people, like, it comes, I think, at points in your life of like stress or something, in my opinion. Now this is getting like into really like what I believe in.
That's all right.
But and I think especially in this documentary, it was happening to people who were kind of at like a crossroads, and it was weird that how this dream kind of like pushed them into like kind of discovering like the answer to their issue. And once they've like solved whatever was bothering them, like whether it was maybe like an emotional trauma or something, eventually the dreams like all like stopped happening. And that's what got really interesting.
That's interesting. I mean, I mentioned lucid dreams. My lucid dreams when I was a kid is actually I ended up writing them all down, and I ended up turning that into like a screenplay. And now I have I actually have a book that I wrote about it. And I don't have those dreams anymore. As soon as I started to write and like started to like draw and like comic book it and stuff like that, I stopped actually having the dream, which was weird because like it was so serialized in my head. I'd like have like a new version of it every night that I could like control, and I was like this superhero with it was really, really cool as like a 12-year-old kid. Like I wanted to go to sleep and have that dream. But as soon as I started to really explore it, it just kind of went away.
Yeah, I've definitely had lucid dreams before. I've never had sleep paralysis, but my old roommate used to have sleep paralysis a lot, and it was weird. And we also lived in like a laneway house, and so both of our rooms are really close together upstairs, you know. And she would a lot of times in her dreams, like she'd hear them like coming up the stairs, and all these shadow people would go into my room. And then we'd talk about it the next morning, and it was almost like I'd always had like a horrible like nightmare that night of like some type. It was never like a lucid dream or like sleep paralysis, but we were very like, I don't know, it was weird.
That is weird. You know, like I don't necessarily discount the idea of I don't know about a shared consciousness, but like everything is energy, and we're constantly giving off all these vibrations and different energy levels and different types of radiation and stuff like that. I don't discount the idea that even if all of this stuff is like there's no such thing as supernatural, okay, let's say that, but she in her dream is seeing these figures, these ghost-like figures, and it's projecting fear into her. And so she, like, her heart starts beating, her chest is pounding or whatever, her whole body is shaking, her temperature is up probably. Maybe she's even like screaming or something like that. It's not waking you up, but you hear it. And all of these sort of waves are coming through and hitting you and affecting you in some way, shape, or form. Like, why? Like, to me, it's almost an impossibility that that's not affecting you.
Yeah.
Like, my dog is a perfect example. He can feel my feelings. I know he can. Like, he knows I'm mad before even I know I'm mad. Like, he knows a signal of, like, if Matt has hit his desk this way, or as soon as he can just feel my heartbeat rise, and he can feel my temperature rise, and that's something that we as humans can't perceive in each other, like consciously. Like I think we do perceive it through body language and stuff like that, but it's not like we're really picking up on, oh, I'm reading that Alexis is feeling this way about me right now, versus a dog who like definitely knows like, oh, Matt is pissed off about something, right? And yeah, so I think that feeds into something like ghosts even existing. I mean, if you want to put the term ghosts on it, sure. I would say that the idea that there's different planes of energy that we can't really perceive, and that a person's like electric consciousness and whatever energy they had in their body and in their mind is somehow contained and lives on in this plane or whatever that we can't perceive again. Like, that sounds cool to me. I don't know. I can buy that.
That's what my next film is about.
Really?
It's like a ghost story, but the ghost is not like a typical kind of ghost, right? It's about this like idea of like a different kind of energy or something that we can't. That's all I'm gonna say right now.
Okay, because I have a script of something similar, but we'll chat about that.
We'll see who writes it first.
Well, I have it written down, but it might be something completely different.
It probably is.
Yeah, probably.
But
we'll chat about it
Whoa,
afterwards. Yeah.
what if it was?
That would be kind of crazy. It would be in line with what we're talking about.
And I think so. Okay, so yeah, now, in my research of sleep paralysis, I think that's why Insidious scared me so much. I know everyone kind of like shit on that movie, but I was like, this is the scariest movie I've seen in my life because it's about like astral projection, right, and sleep paralysis.
I really liked Insidious until the last like 5 minutes
With
or
the
whatever. I was like, is that Dave Grohl in a devil costume or something? It made it almost funny to me, but up until that, it was really great, I thought.
Oh my god, the part that it's just like totally a tangent.
That's all right.
The part that scared me the most was in the first one, at least, when that older, the wise lady, the sleep paralysis lady, when she went into their house and she was saying how she like saw Dalton or whatever, and she like goes into his room, and then the like scary guy's in the corner, and he's like, it's like, and his hand lifts up and points. Oh my god, I had a mirror, like a full-length mirror that was in the corner of my room, and it like looked like that, the shadow of it. I didn't sleep for like a week. Oh,
I hate when you have those things that just like look like that scene that are around you that like you can't forget.
You're like, no.
I had growing up, have you ever seen Signs?
Mm-hmm.
So when he like is like comforting his little girl, and he looks out of the window and he sees the thing on top of the roof. Yeah. I had a view out of my bathroom window growing up that looked exactly like that over top of our garage. Mm-hmm. And I like, after seeing Signs, for the rest of the time we lived in that house from like until I was 15, I wouldn't look out that window in the dark when I was taking a leak in the middle of the night or something, because I'm like, I'm gonna see a fucking alien or something just like standing on the top of that roof, and it's oh shit my pants. But yeah, actually, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before or not, but I saw this movie called I think it's called Iris. That's wrong. It's something about the eyes. Fuck. Iris. Something about the iris. Anyways, shit. It's on Netflix. Search Iris on Netflix. It'll come up. And it's about this microbiologist or evolutionary biologist who studies worms. Okay. And he falls in love with this woman who's very like spiritual and kind of yoga person and Buddhist sort of, and she's kind of into reincarnation and things like that. And he's obviously very atheist as an evolutionary biologist, right? And so they're kind of debating it during one scene, and she's like, well, what about the worm? And he's like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, so the worm, what senses does the worm have? And he's like, the worm can feel and it can taste. Mm-hmm. And she's like, so the worm has no concept of light at all. And he's like, no. And she's like, so even if the worm was intelligent enough to have something explained to them and converse with you, you could not explain to them what light is, how it looks, what it does, because they have no perception of what it is. And this little scene in this kind of random indie movie like really stuck with me spiritually. I was like, whoa, that's totally true. And that's what like it was kind of around the time I had gotten Boris, and like I didn't really think of animals. I think of animals completely different sort of now than I did before. Just like the way they perceive the world differently than us and stuff. And so like, yeah, it kind of got my gears going about different types of energy levels and how not necessarily a heaven or hell could exist, but just like how, you know, when we die, all of our energy has to be conserved. So where does that go? And it might get farted out just in like heat, but maybe it gets contained and goes into some different place. And like, I mean, my kind of idea is that it goes like that you're basically contained in your own mind, like in this, in like, you know, kind of a world of your own memories and stuff like that. And like, in that context, even, it makes sense to me that somebody who's like tortured and has had a bad life or whatever might go to a quote unquote hell and stay there for more like an eternity or whatever because their mind was disturbed and they, you know, had a tough go at it or whatever the case is. And vice versa. If you lived happily and whatever and peacefully, then maybe your mind gets locked in a nice place. Or maybe you just fucking die. I'm okay with all of those options.
You've like mentioned like energy like several times, and I 100% like agree. I'm a huge believer in like energies and stuff. That's a big reason why to be a D-bag for a second, that's a big reason why like I don't eat meat, is because of course I feel like a tortured animal like has an energy, and now you're gonna put that energy into your body. Like I don't know, like what is that doing to your overall aura, you know?
I honestly struggle with that personally, like
yeah.
Morally and economically and environmentally, there's like I agree with so many reasons to not eat meat. And I honestly gave a good go at substituting it for a little while, and I just like I don't like any of the substitutes. Like
I don't eat any of the substitutes except I did have a tofurkey at Thanksgiving.
But like no, like even like think like hummus, avocado,
What?
like most types of beans, like I just don't like these things.
I am not going to be on a
so
podcast
basically
that
like
shits on hummus.
like any type of protein that's not meat, I just don't really like.
Oh.
So that's tough for me.
I also would argue that the animals probably don't like being tortured.
Yeah, I definitely I mean like of course like
I'm just teasing.
No, I know. It's true though. I also, when I get down this train, and this is like way off on a different thing, but when I get on this train of like vegetarianism and like why I would go down that road for the reasons I kind of just mentioned, I also get down that train in like kind of every aspect of my life and think that if I'm going to make this dramatic change for this, then I'd have like morally I have to be consistent enough in all aspects of my life, and like that includes where my clothes come from and where my food comes from, and all that stuff would be very great and admirable to try and achieve, but it's just not attainable.
Yeah.
With the way that we currently live, like I can't afford to buy clothes that aren't made by slave labor. Like that's just a reality of our fucking system, and it sucks. And there's like one of the reasons that I came into film and try to get into art forms in general is that like it's one of the only ways I think you can try to push change towards, you know, difficult topics like that, because they just can't get approached in a traditional sense because like money and greed corrupts so much of those higher levels that the only way you can try to initiate any sort of change is by you know exposing those types of things to just regular people and getting kind of people in an uproar about it. But everybody knows that type of stuff goes on, and we kind of just blissfully ignore it and all participate in it, and because it's difficult not to, very difficult not to.
Of course. And that's definitely obviously something that it's hard for me to live by too. Like I can't live completely vegan. Mostly clothes. I agree with you. Clothes is the hardest for sure, just because I'm like I know this was probably made by like some poor 8-year-old, but it's like I can't buy like something local. Like it's so expensive.
Yeah, it's just a tough, nasty
Yeah.
reality of our world, and it kind of ties back to the conspiracy theory stuff of just like, there's high level shit that goes on and
Yeah.
high level corruption that I think a lot of times gets thrown aside as like conspiracy theory nonsense. It's just like, it's not conspiracy theory nonsense
Yeah.
that to think that psychopaths work their way up through a system built on squashing your competitors all the way up.
Mhm.
Well, of course, those people make it to the top. That's what the system is built on.
Mhm.
And you need people like that in order to sign off on factory conditions in Bangladesh that they
Mhm.
know will end up in people dying,
Mhm.
purely so they can make T-shirts for 5 cents instead of 10 cents.
Now I'm just depressed.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe we can cut this part out and let's cycle back to the alien talk, because that's a little bit more fun. So do you believe that aliens have ever visited our planet?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think they did while they were here? And when do you think they were here?
I feel like I definitely like could believe that the aliens like helped with the pyramids. I definitely like associate the aliens with like Stonehenge and stuff like that. Yeah. So I feel like it was around any time in that period.
So do you think they came here with the purpose of trying to like grow humanity, or do you think they just accidentally happened upon this planet? Or do you, because okay, a film I'm making about coming up is about a solar system that's 40 light years away.
Yeah.
That's like the closest one that we know of.
'Kay.
How the fuck did they get here?
Mhm.
Transdimensional beings or something like that.
Mhm.
I'll buy kind of anything that is beyond what we already know within the realm of physics and stuff. But I just don't see why they would come here. Like, it just seems useless to me.
I feel like it was with the intention of maybe not like growing humanity, more of like guiding humanity, maybe setting up some like,
To what end?
I don't know, man.
Take a guess.
Maybe just helping us maybe head towards a more like conscious like way of life, which I feel like we've like veered drastically from now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like, it's nice to think that there's like a utopian
Yeah.
alien galactical society
God,
that
we've
is
like
like
so obviously gotten like more and more high as the like, we're
That's okay. It's
look
the
at
slack
like, what we're
line.
talking about.
Well, that's what it's for. It's conspiracy theories,
I
man.
know, it's just,
A
it's just funny.
galactic utopian
I honestly,
empire.
I didn't think I thought I was gonna be able to resist this and not head down this path. But
Why
like,
would you want to resist it?
I don't know.
Yeah. That type of thing. I mean, that would be really fucking cool to find out.
Yeah.
And again, like, it's not something that I would be like, it would not shock me
Yeah.
if we found that out tomorrow. The President of the United States was like, oh, we received word. Oh, fuck. I hope it's not Donald Trump that has to give that type of news. But anyways, yeah, if we found that out tomorrow, I would be like, sweet. What do they got? Some people would like panic. Like, there would probably be mass panic across the entire planet.
Well, that's why I
like,
don't think, going back to like the government, I seriously doubt if they knew anything, they would say anything.
Yeah. I don't know.
And even if they did exactly like what you said, if Donald Trump like tweeted tomorrow that he's made contact with aliens, it would be like, oh, really?
I just don't understand how you could keep something like that secret.
Because I think it would just like cause humanity to like implode on itself.
But how would you keep it secret? Like, how would you ensure that everybody that knew this secret was of that stern enough mindset to not release it?
I mean, doesn't that go with every
Not even like
single-
tell their spouse about it, who then tells their friends about it, and on the way down the list.
But then if we're gonna say that, then we have to like discredit every conspiracy theory that involves the government like in some elaborate way. 'Cause exactly like how would everyone keep that secret?
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know, like, yeah. I think if like to compare something like an alien conspiracy to something like 9/11 conspiracy, the U.S. could have had a hand in a domestic terrorist attack without specifically planning out the attack to the point of being able to have their hands pretty clean of it, other than like a couple people, you know. Something like an ongoing conspiracy of aliens that are buried underneath, you know, Area 51 or something like that. That requires maintenance and more people learning as the years go by. Yeah. So you have to let people into this. You know, how do they know? Do they even tell the presidents? The president is only there for a maximum of 8 years. Yeah, like, why would they tell that person, you know? So, like...
Do you ever think about that? Like, man, there are some things that the president probably doesn't know.
For sure. Definitely. But, like, who then...
I know.
Who is in this system long enough to keep that secret,
exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
An alien. I don't know. I think if anything, that would be more a... If it does exist, it would be more like a network of scientists. Yeah. I guess, you know what's funny is when I was reading more about the Illuminati and like listening to just people talk about them in videos and stuff like that. It's like the Illuminati was born out of protest against the church's influence in the state and geared towards atheism and evidence-based science to gear their political systems. And I was like, why does this sounds great? Like, why does this sound bad? I don't understand why we're vilifying this group of people. I don't know. Like, it was so. Oh man, I fucking lost my train of thought. But how did we get to aliens, or from aliens to Illuminati?
We were talking.
Oh, because the Illuminati would keep the secret of the aliens. Is I guess what I was implying. Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously. That's when I start to like disbelieve like a bunch of conspiracy theories. I'm like, really, like, exactly what you're saying. Could that many people actually keep any of this stuff like secret? Like, that's.
But if it was more of a network of scientists and intellectuals that were like, kind of okay. Let's say it's after the nuclear bomb first went off, you know, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like Oppenheimer and Einstein and those guys, like they never, like they built the bomb. But when they were, especially Einstein, when he was like trying to discover, you know, this energy force and like working on splitting the atom and these, like when they were working on these types of things, they were trying to solve energy issues. They were not trying, like, as the scientists were, like when they were first trying to explore it, like that was the drive that they have, right? Is like, wow, there's like all this energy in this, you know, tiny little ball. Like, how can we get at it and stuff like that? And obviously some people see weaponization in something like that, and it snowballs into an arms race that devastates, you know, hundreds of thousands of people. I think maybe at that time there was those like a few of the scientists or whatever that at the top of their field, like when you get to like the top of the physics field and stuff like that, there are probably like 3 or 4 people that actually like know what is fucking happening.
And are even like smart enough to mentally
comprehend it. And they're all talking about it and stuff, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if they're just sitting there being like, you know what? Yeah, so we have like the aliens came and we have them contained in this building and stuff, but like if we release that information, like 80% of the globe is gonna have like a religious fit and like there's gonna be riots and shit like that. So let's keep this on the DL for now.
I would love to see that super colloquial conversation between 4 science. You know what?
Einstein and Oppenheimer
let's just keep this
just in the bog. Like, you know what, bro? What they did with that atom bomb thing, it's not what I meant to happen. I know, man.
That got way out ahead.
I know. I was just like, I just wanted to make energy, man, and they fucking blew up those people, dude.
I think that was not cool.
Not cool, man. Cool. You know what? We should just like, when we learn something new, we should just keep it to ourselves until people are not stupid enough to just like blow each other up with it.
That's probably how this all started.
Yeah.
You probably just figured it out.
I know. Accidental genius.
I could believe that, like, people keeping aliens a secret just, like, in spite of something. Like, well, I'm not telling you about this then. Like, that makes sense, yeah.
You don't want free healthcare? Well, then you don't get aliens.
I
Maybe.
mean,
Those are the 30 pages of the JFK assassination. He was an alien.
Yeah. Like, I mean, all those things are super funny, right? Like, Hillary Clinton is, like, a lizard person, you know? And, like,
Yeah.
Ted Cruz is a Zodiac killer. Like, those things.
The
are
thing
all
that's
funny.
hilarious about, well, that's kind of frustrating about stuff like that is it undermines
The
like real issues with those
Mhm.
people that are like, because like a conversation will inevitably divulge into like these crazy conspiracy theories about things, and like, well, this person did this. It's like, well, we can talk about like the real stuff that they did. You know,
Mhm.
nobody's claiming that like Hillary Clinton versus like was like a good person and
Mhm.
didn't do, you know, maybe greasy and bad things on her way to the top and lie to people and lie to, you know, whoever, and maybe do backhanded deals with governments and stuff like that. Like, sure, she's a politician for like
Yeah.
30 years, you know,
Yeah.
you can't get through that without doing shit like that. Like, you just can't.
Yeah.
That's the way it's built. And then on the flip side, like, you know, Donald Trump's laundry list of disgusting behavior and stuff like
Mhm.
that, that's way, way longer. But I mean, it dives into conspiracy theories about, you know, urine tapes and I mean, I've read some pretty horrific things that are just like, you know, child prostitute trafficking and shit like that. That's like, yeah, I can believe that,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
There's enough like movies and like art and like, you know, random little like articles and shit like that about that stuff. You know, we know that like child trafficking and sex trafficking and things like that is a thing.
Mhm.
And we know that only like powerful people can like actually like pay and like participate in it.
Mhm.
And so what the fuck do you think?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that man, there's just like, you get to this certain level of power and people think they're just untouchable and can do whatever they want, and for some reason it just descends into disgusting and inhumane behavior. I don't understand why that is.
I don't either.
Starts with like fucking human sacrifice and shit like that.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Have you seen Mother?
No,
What the fuck? You have to watch it.
I don't like scary movies. They
It's
scare
not
me.
I mean, it's not like scary.
I do like Darren Aronofsky though.
Like, just as a filmmaker, you fucking have to
Yeah,
watch
that's
that
true.
movie.
He's one of my favorites.
And it's not like scary, like,
It's like Darren Aronofsky scary.
Yeah.
It's like creepy, weird.
holy fuck. Like, I wanted to leave the theater at one point. Like, it's so uncomfortable. Like, it's
See, well, you're not really selling me.
it's so good, but it's crazy. Like, can you imagine just like as like an artist to like have that much of an effect on people, and people are like
Yeah.
freaking out about it? Like, isn't that like goals? Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like I would love to have. My favorite like review. It's like Darren Aronofsky's new film is a artistic, like self-indulgent piece of garbage. I'm like, I wish someone would say that about something. That's like the best thing anyone can. I want to make an artistic self-indulgent piece of garbage. Like, it's
true.
Watch it. Watch it.
Okay,
It's so
well,
good.
Yeah, I do love it, Darren Aronofsky.
When you said human sacrifice, it made me think of it.
Oh man, that sounds scary.
It's fucked.
Yeah.
But so good.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
I just want to be on record saying that Mother's good, so in 20 years when people like realize how good it is, I'm gonna be like, haha.
I feel like it got pretty great.
It's like half and half.
Yeah,
I
some
feel.
people really hated it and some people really loved
The
it.
people who hate it just don't get it.
But that seems to be the case with a lot of Darren Aronofsky films.
Mhm.
Like, a lot of people really hate The Fountain, and a
Mhm.
lot of people really love The Fountain. I love The Fountain.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. But it's definitely like different, you know. Some people don't like non-linear stories and stuff like that, and don't really. Some people just don't really follow it, you know. It's not like a comment on their
I know.
intelligence or anything like that. It's
Kind
just
of
like
is.
maybe. Well, no, it's a comment on what they find
Yeah.
interesting. You know,
Yeah.
like they don't find really like watching and digging into the plot of a movie interesting, and that's
Yeah.
fine. That's okay.
Yeah, and I know I have to like remind myself of that too. I'm like, not everyone likes watching a movie like that, you know? Yeah, exactly. Like some people watch movies for different reasons.
Yeah. Like that shouldn't change the way you make movies or
Yeah.
watch movies yourself. But yeah, I've definitely come around with a lot of that stuff in regards to like just art in general.
Yeah.
Just like, you know what, if some people like it, then let them
Yeah.
have it and whatever. But I mean, yeah, I mean, there's obviously an art form and a different type of intelligence and just engagement in getting
Mhm.
into stuff like that for sure.
Word.
Weird. You're really bouncing back, firing hot topics back and forth.
We have.
Yeah, it's true. The ghost stuff. Have you ever like seen a ghost?
I've never seen a ghost, but I have felt a ghost's like presence.
Okay.
More recently, the laundry room in my apartment building right now is haunted as fuck.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, you ever just like felt just like wrong?
I want to say yes. I'm not sure that I've ever been that conscious of it though.
I used to. So now this is getting like really. If you don't believe in ghosts, then you just don't have to listen to this next part of my conversation. And I used to babysit this girl, and she could like her and like her dad and like her sister, like that whole side of the family could all see like spirits and ghosts, and I felt like they were just very connected to that kind of world, if you do believe in such a thing. And I used to babysit her, and before I had even like heard of anything about that, if you just like walked into her bedroom, it was just like you just didn't want to be in there. Like I can't even describe it. It was like messed up. And I just remember so many times babysitting her late at night, and like I swear like I'd hear her walking around upstairs, and I'd go up there and she was like in bed, you know, and she would just say like some weird offhand thing about like someone she saw that day, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like she'd be like, oh, and then like me and the man were like playing, and I'm like, what, when? Like it's just like little weird things like that I was too scared to like delve into at the time.
really
I'm
be
like, oh, that's
"What
really
man?"
yeah, I'm like, no, that's super messed up. I'm just gonna like not address it, you know.
Oh dear.
And I know like my mom has seen ghosts before, and the house that we used to live in, I was too young to remember any of this, but she like said it was haunted, and she like asked the ghost to like leave them alone, and I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of grew up with similar stuff, not
Yeah.
necessarily around me personally, but friends that lived around us. They one of my friends, her mom was a medium, and they were like everybody that like were around her friends had like weird stories of being in their house and playing with Ouija boards and like finding like they lost the remote, and so like they asked the Ouija board where the remote is, and it like says it's like upstairs or something, even though like there's no reason why it would be upstairs, and it's like sitting upright on the table in the middle of it, like frozen cold.
Shut up. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I heard this from like 5 different friends that were there. So
What?
and like going upstairs and seeing their shoes all rearranged in like triangles and stuff like that. And I mean, her mom claimed her mom claims to like kind of like to see things, like to actually like see like little like parademons or like whatever you want to call them, like little things, like sometimes very innocent things, sometimes very not innocent things, right? And she's constantly like dusting the house and that type of stuff. And they actually had her perform an exorcism in one of the stores in the town that surrounds the like house.
Oh my
and
God.
multiple people have accounts of her like being possessed and talking in this like weird odd tone voice in the middle of this thing, like chasing this quote unquote demon out of the space. And it's kind of like, man, multiple friends of mine are like telling me this type of stuff from like things that they saw growing up in their childhood, and the like I don't know, like that type of stuff. I can't again firmly say that I believe it, but I don't think that it's an impossibility. So just sounds like an interesting thing to explore to me.
Oh my God, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just been, and that's even getting into things like, you know, like huge coincidences and stuff like that. Like
yeah, totally. Like there's definitely like, there's definitely things that account for it, but I don't know. People give Ouija board shit and like it's just a game, right?
Yeah.
Like it's actually like sold by a gaming company. But I remember this girl, they would just make it out of a pizza box and a shot glass, and we would do it just for shits and giggles. And even if somebody is pushing it around, the stuff that would actually happen, like as far as like the shoes getting rearranged and those types of things, like unless like there were people like actually upstairs, like our parents and stuff, like playing stupid jokes on us, then shit was happening.
I've used Ouija boards and stuff like before too, and I would actually never keep the two parts like together. Like there's like the board and then there's the little those cannot be in the same room together. They shouldn't even be in the same building together, like because like bad stuff starts happening. And it's just like it's just weird stuff that I mean nobody else would ever really know, I remember asking, there was 3 of us, I wasn't pushing it, and we like, we found somebody and we're talking to this like Russian, said he was like a Russian prince or something, his name was Michael, and like murdered 2 people or something like that. Got a lot of information out of it.
Yeah, we did actually.
Very talkative.
Well, it was like, did you kill anybody? It was like, yes. Like, how many people? 2. And it's like, oh my god. And then we like researched it, and there's this person that existed.
Holy fuck.
And we're like,
oh my god. That's like when kids
that
say, like,
none of
really
us would have
weird stuff.
known.
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
like
yeah.
16, 17, and like,
I got
fuck,
chills.
our
Look, I have goosebumps.
our extent of history is like Canadian history from our grade 10 textbooks or whatever. Like, I can't explain that, and there's no way any of my friends knew who that person was.
That's messed up.
So unless that's just like a really crazy coincidence that one of my buddies was like, haha, I'm just gonna throw out these like random things, and we happened to find somebody that was named Michael from Russia that was a prince and killed 2 people, then okay.
Whoa.
But this can also go back to the Mandela effect. Maybe that stuff didn't even fucking happen, and I'm just like remembering it as a false memory of a kid as a dream.
Oh my god,
or
that
something.
stuff is so weird. Like when you think about like false memories.
Because there's obviously things that I do remember, like the Shazam movie and things like that weren't real.
I remember even, and it's tough to say, like having some conversations with my mom about like a memory I've always had, been like, and then this and this happened, and my mom's like, that's not what happened at all. But it's like was like my memory, like it's just weird when things like that happen.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy things in our world, and I don't know. We've talked a lot about them. Maybe it's time to close the book on our chat for the day, and let the listeners, the few dozen that might tune in. That's probably even a little bit generous.
I have a lot of fans. Okay.
Yeah, we'll let them absorb it, and they can flame us with comments if they choose to do so.
And please send me stories of ghost experiences and sleep paralysis.
Yes,
Ghosts.
so we can steal them for our movies.
Yeah. Do you have like something you say, like a news anchor when you sign off, like?
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
And that's it for the Slackline. We want to thank Alexis Makepeace for dropping by.
Thanks.
We'll try to find what happened to Jay Wow. Hopefully he can be returned here, and if he is, he can be the real Jay Wow. We are concerned that he's a robotic doppelganger.
That's a Jersey Shore character, right?
Jay Wow?
Jay Wow.
Is it?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Is it for real?
Yeah, like she was on Jersey Shore.
I had no fucking clue.
Oh.
I'm just finding that out now. All right. Well, if that's copyright infringement, I don't give a shit. All right. That's it for the Slackline. Thanks, Alexis.
Bye.
Have a good day, everybody.
I know what you need
but I never met a woman with so much greed. Hey mama, hey mama, hey, hey mama, I've seen you around, messing with all the poor boys in this town. Hey mama, hey mama, hey, you burn this whole place down just to wear the crown. What you need, but I never met a woman with so much greed. Hey mama, hey mama, hey, hey mama, I've seen you around, messing with all the poor boys in this town. Hey mama, hey mama, hey, you just to wear the crown. Know what you need.